All right, hello everyone. This is the Throughout the Film podcast. This week, for our first week on Noir, we're going to be talking about the film Double Indemnity. Wait, I can't. Can you pronounce it for me? Double Indemnity, which is a noir film from
1944.
And it takes place in 1938. Film centers around an insurance agent who conspires with a woman to commit insurance fraud, essentially, and
we should
kill
name
her
them.
husband.
We have the insurance agent is Walter Neff, played by Fred McMurray, and the woman he conspires with is Phyllis Diedrich, played by Barbara Sandwick.
By the way,
concept of unsuspicion. Unsuspicion, it sort of focuses on the everyday, the average person's sort of interactions with like the criminal world without their knowledge of it. And so it's sort of film noir presents this idea like to the audience that there's a whole world going on that we can't see. So this whole criminal underworld that we interact with every day, but that we can't ever like really be a part of or know. So film noir kind of lets us peek into that world and kind of demonstrates this idea of unsuspicion.
And it frightens us, or it is kind of meant to frighten us, like with the concept that the person at the cash register might have just killed someone the night before, or that the couple talking at the supermarket are talking there because this is the example used in class, but are talking there because they don't want to be seen together. And I think there's a bunch of really strong examples in this film. The cigar man,
Mr. Jackson is what he's
Mr. Jackson.
As.
We've been calling him the cigar man for the longest time. But the cigar man, Mr. Jackson, is one of the, in my opinion,
he's sort of like the perfect example of like this idea of unsuspicion. Mm-hmm. So it's like when Walter Neff portrays Mr. Diedrich after he kills him, Mr. Diedrich played by Tom Powers. After he kills him, he boards a train, walks to the back, where he's going to jump off, pretend to kill himself, or go pretend to be Mr. Diedrich and dying. Yeah. So there's this man there, the cigar man, as we call him, Mr. Jackson, just sitting there, just chilling, living his everyday life. And he kind of exemplifies this idea of unsuspicion because he's just going about this whole day normally, having this casual conversation with this man who came to the back, only to be brought back into the story later and like having then realized that what he saw was like this whole criminal conspiracy kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that like on top of that, the way that everything was kind of found out about Mr. Jackson in relating back to like Keyes as a person was kind of interesting, and like the idea of unsuspicion, because he literally saw Walter Neff in the office and did like a double take, but wasn't necessarily sure where he had seen him before, which is kind of like the scary part about unsuspicion, is that you could see these people and recognize them, but never know where you saw them before.
Yeah, true.
It's true.
And then on the note of Keyes, like you have towards the end of the film, Walter is listening to Keyes' audio recording that's like, oh, I've double and triple checked Walter, and like I've investigated him fully, and he's absolutely not responsible for this. And it's like that like the way that Keyes completely trusted Walter, and in a way Walter betrayed him in there is like the ultimate innocent bystander kind of example. Maybe for that there's a bunch of like really good examples in this film, but I think that might be kind of the strongest one. And then that was also kind of the thing that made Walter have like his realization that like he's kind of in too deep into this conspiracy, and like he's he's really no longer the good guy in the situation. He's not helping this woman out to escape her husband. He's, committing murder, and like he's been the one who's done everything. And I don't think he really realized that. And as a viewer, I don't, I didn't realize it until, like I didn't start to kind of catch on to really what was going on in the film until really that moment.
Yeah, I really liked your sort of ideas of Keys as the innocent bystander. Because like I never had that thought like go through my head because he's like investigating the crime itself because wants to make
Hmm.
sure they don't pay that money. But in reality, yeah, he is sort of this bystander because this close friend of his, coworker of his, committed
That
this
he
crime,
vouches for, he like
and
100%
yeah,
vouches for.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
just such
the
an
thing
interesting
about
dynamic.
Keys that's also interesting is that he never suspects Neff in the insurance fraud, even though he's the one who slipped the papers to Diedrichson,
Hmm.
while Lola was kind of sitting there as an innocent bystander too. Because I think that it's the thing is that Keys really reveres Walter Neff as like this good friend and this
Yeah,
person
he
that he's
tries to
known
give him like the good
probably for
job.
years. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
he
he
tried
knows
to give
him.
him this sort of promotion.
Yeah, and he's known him for like years, so that when he just doesn't suspect him the same way that he suspects the people from the insurance company because he doesn't know them and he doesn't have that little man in his gut telling him that Walter Neff is actually
Hmm.
secretly a crooked person.
And what even further drives home this point is how like I don't remember at which point this happens, but Walter has this in during part of his like monologue, in his like internal whatever, he says like, oh, what if Keys like knows all along, and what if Keys has been onto us all along and like is actually just messing with me? Only way to know for sure is to go up there and check out his desk. And that's actually, now that I remember, that's how he discovered the tape that like says that Keys believes he's innocent. And like I actually think that Walter could have gotten away with all of this if he had actually worked to get away with all of it instead of kind of having this change of heart, having this moral like, crisis in a sense, and turning around and, like turning himself in essentially. Um
Yeah, like when he told Nico Zacchetti, played by Byron Barr, when he told him to like leave and go back because he fully had the opportunity to like
Yeah,
pin
yeah,
him
he
for the
didn't have
crime and
to
all
out
that.
himself, but by outing
Yeah,
himself there, he literally admitted to the murder because, then he's spotted at the scene of the crime. Miko, or is it Miko with an M or Nico with
It's
an?
it's
let me
Nino.
check again. Nino,
Oh,
sorry,
okay,
that's on me. Nino
okay, yeah,
Zacchetti.
yeah. Nino, I'll put a little text to correct that. But the go back in time. Um, but yeah, the like he could have there was like every opportunity for Walter to set this up as a framed murder. Like there was every opportunity that Walter could have gotten away with this on his own and framed like was it framed the boyfriend for the murder, like putting him on the scene of the crime, like just creating a ton of confusion so the investigation doesn't lead back to him, but he like was overcome by his moral, the by like the weight of everything that he had done, and so he essentially like gives up, and well, literally gives up, not essentially. um
Hmm.
which, yeah, no,
Yeah,
and it's
I
and
think
it's
it like
interesting because, yeah, yeah, no, go ahead,
I
Brian.
I was just saying like to get back to like Keys as kind of like this kind of bystander figure. Like the scene where they're in their office and Neff gets that call from, oh my god, what is her name? From Mrs. Diedrichson.
Phyllis.
And they have Phyllis Diedrichson. And they have that whole conversation, and like Keys is there the whole time, just unsuspicious. He has no idea what's going on right in front of him, where they're like figuring out this key moment in like this whole crime. And Keys is there just sitting there, but like, oh, who's that lady you're talking to? She must drink right from the bottle, you know? This whole thing just going on right below his nose.
Hmm.
Exactly.
It's
That's
like
like the
all this
thing.
irony, yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing that's very interesting about Keyes, just kind of like as a character in the film, is that he is always suspecting someone, but when there's people right under his nose, he never suspects them, which is like a very real life thing. It's kind of like what people went through during like World War II with like the idea of like communism, like World War I with the idea of communism like being right under your nose and people being constantly afraid of this thing and not knowing
Hmm.
whether or not your neighbor is a communist
And
or
all
if
that
your friend is one.
the loose lips sink ships thing, all that, yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of like the person that Keyes is. Honestly, he's the one who suspects everyone but can't suspect the
Like
person
the
right next to
classic
him.
American, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of interesting that like that's such a, celebrated like character to be like the classic American who, is kind of the victim in everything, but in the end is like morally and like righteous. Because the that's like such a, in a way, like an unheroic role to play. And Keyes as a character, he strikes me as like a very like high aspiring, like I don't know, like supposed to be working hard, who like kind of works his way up and then is kind of like steamrolls through other people to for his own success. Like I think that's the type of character that he strikes me as. But if you kind of look at him critically or like really think about what what the basis of everything he does is, he does fill the trope of the white picket fence person, except he's kind of, he has that whole thing about like not seeing people, like where he's like doesn't trust women anymore, which yeah, that's foreshadowing the you know femme fatale. Like he's already dealt with this entire experience, this entire noir experience. In a way, he's the end of a, he's like the character at the end of a noir film. You can make a prequel about him, but like he's very normal, but at the same time he's also like a very unique, you know I'd say interesting, but like not necessarily even positive character.
Yeah. I think that I mean, I don't know if I necessarily agree with the point of him not being a positive character, but because I think that he is positive in some aspects, like his suspicion of Neff kind of helped save Lola and
Hmm.
from like Phyllis. Not his suspicion of Neff, his suspicion of Phyllis helped save Lola from whatever repercussions could have happened from the actions of Neff and Phyllis. So I think that in that aspect that he's a positive character, but in
Yeah.
other aspects of him constantly taking things away from people and not suspecting people right under his nose, that he's not a good character. So I think that there's a little bit of
I
a
mean,
back and
he's
forth
not
with
perfect.
Keys.
Nobody's perfect.
Yeah, that's
But
what.
he
Well,
seems
Yeah,
like
that's what makes
overall
him
like the
a
most,
complex, great character. Yeah. Well,
I think he's like the most morally upright kind of one. Like he's,
yeah,
I mean, especially in
but
comparison to Neff. Neff is out
mhm.
here just
Well, what
for
I would say
sure.
to that is that like I think that he isn't kind of framed as a good character. That he is actually like the best, like the most morally like sound character. He's the good guy if you look at the things he does, but like the way that he's written, the things that he says makes us not really, or like tries to kind of make us not like him. And then the way that because the protagonist of this film is Naffer Walter, is he is the film is shot through his eyes. We're literally in his brain, um and the whole time. And so the people who are against him become people that we like sort of resent. And I don't like, for me it didn't even happen intentionally. Like I started to kind of like be suspicious of every little thing that Keys did as I was rooting for the main character in the film. But and then like that was further pushed along with the things that Keys said about women, and like the like clearly like um I don't know, he struck me as like the ruthless capitalist trope from noir, that you see a lot, which actually is filled by I don't remember his name, but the CEO of the insurance
Mr.
company,
Diedrichsen.
Mr. Diedrichsen. Yeah.
Oh, you mean the boss
Oh,
of the insurance
the
company?
boss of the insurance company. Yeah, we didn't review his name before.
I want to say it's Edward S.N. something.
Okay.
Played by Richard Gaines, maybe? We'll go with him.
I'll put on I'll put on the screen if we're wrong. But yeah, like that is like I think that the Keys is kind of disguised. He's like a hero in disguise. And the film wants us to not support him because the film is completely biased towards Walter and wants us to root for him, as the film should. You know, that's why it's a good film. But like if you really think about what Keys actually does and aren't like comparing his history, which we have no clue about. He could have been making all that up, you know. Like he's right, you know. He goes with his morals, like with the whole suicide thing. He could have easily argued it was a suicide, so he didn't have to get the money, or so he didn't have to give the money. But you see that he actually just wants to do what is like the he wants to do what is right and what is like true. He wants the truth to emerge. He doesn't just act in the interests of the company.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's where like Keys kind of becomes like this paradox in the film of like who of crime, because it's kind of existing within the inside and there's people that are seeing it from the outside, but they don't always know what's going on within the whole sphere of crime, which is kind of like the same idea as the mafia. It's like people know that it's happening. We don't know why it's happening, where it's happening, when it's happening, or who's even involved within it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think we all kind of agree that Keys represents that sort of paradox of the one suspicion.
And then I mean, you mentioned paradoxes, and like, you know, that's kind of supposed to be the theme here. And one thing that was really blaring for me was the paradox, like what I call the paradox of the insurance worker, where we have Walter is the insurance worker who works for commission, and his whole get rich quick scheme is to steal from the company that pays his bills. And not only that, he is actually going to help a client of his literally steal from him. Like this is what most um people who are trying to defraud the insurance are going to do, but without the help of the insurance company. So it's a paradox because he's working in his own self-interest, but he's like actively working against himself. And at the same time, if the plan works, he benefits himself. So it's, you know, I mean, you guys know what a paradox is, but it's hard to explain. But I do feel that's a strong example of paradoxes in this film.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what you're saying. I think like additionally, like if we expanded past like the insurance worker, it's kind of like the insurance company as a whole, if you kind of think about it. Because like if we're gonna be like very jaded, the entire insurance company could be like a crime syndicate, because the boss of the company didn't even want to give Phyllis the money because he wanted to assume that it was a suicide. I mean, yes, she killed him, but at the end of the day, had she not killed him, that's very criminally, that's very malicious of him not to want to give her the money just because he doesn't want to give her the money, even when his company has the equity to give it to her.
And I also think I don't know if this sentiment was like a thing back when this movie was released, but nowadays, like we look at insurance companies, the big bad guy, the one who doesn't want to pay and like like the tiniest little infraction, like, you didn't report this leak in your ceiling. Oh, your house ceiling collapsed. Too bad, no money, you didn't tell us. Like, they don't actually care about the truth. They care about the technicalities. It's like a like stupid courtroom drama where you get off because someone forgot to log the evidence. Like, it is, and that is like, that does like kind of implicate that the insurance company is the bad guy. And if anything, I actually like automatically assumed that the insurance company was going to fight this fight this instance of fraud, this like which from their perspective is a tragedy that they just have absolutely no sympathy for. Like, we know that there's something fishy going on, but there's not. It's like, this woman lost her husband, from their perspective, from the perspective of the insurance agent. And so that's it's it is interesting to think of them as the the noir mafia, instead of the
Yeah, it's sort of because like so the police in the film, they're just like, okay, it happened, whatever. And but then the insurance company, the only reason they are suspicious is sort of like out of this materialistic sense of, we want our money, which is a really interesting angle for it, because it's not like born out of like some sort of, we need justice or whatever, this is wrong. It's purely for the capitalistic kind of reasons.
Exactly. That's why I think that, like, if we're looking at it through a modern perspective and through the perspective of someone from the 1940s, it is like really is just a game of capitalism and and of like legal crime in a sense,
Mhm.
because their contracts can make them not pay if they find like the smallest thing. Like, if going back to the scene where Phyllis was trying to get the money after Diedrichson had died, he was like, the the boss said, no, the autopsy didn't show anything. It was a completely sound death. He died falling off of a train going 15 miles an hour. But he wanted there to be more. He
But
wanted
he
there
was
to
like,
be
we're having
depression,
another autopsy.
exactly. He wanted there to be like depression, anxiety,
Mhm.
something
and
that could
and the
be a
whole
suicide.
yeah, and the whole like his whole attitude that entire time was kind of like snide, and like like very insensitive, and like I would even describe as rude. Like, he seemed like happy with himself that he was going to bust this open and not have to pay. And like, it's pretty clear that like they are very wealthy. Like, this is a very successful insurance company. This isn't some small business that we should sympathize with. They're painted as a villain, but it's not something that we like. It's really, I think it's like subtle enough that you don't consider that. And I might ask about that, like, why this seems kind of out of character for its time. Why are we having this like anti-industry, anti-capitalism sentiment at a time where like communism is the biggest threat to the United States, in the opinion of the general public, and like where the money is, right? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
I just I think that one of the things that's kind of driving this point home for like during the time of, for living in during the time of communism in this film is the idea of unsuspicion, not the paradox, but the idea of unsuspicion living within these films, because many of the media campaigns during that time were about your next door neighbor could be a communist, and that
I'll
kind of
throw
like
some of those up on the screen
turned
as well. Yeah.
and that kind of translated back into like our time, because there was a show called The Americans that I remember watching that was about spies. And this is a trope that has lived ever since World War II, of the person right next to you, or even the two people I'm talking to right now about this movie could be people trying to become CIA spies to completely spy on my life and tell them everything that's going on and bugging my computer and everything right now. Like, for all I know, someone could be doing that, but I don't know. And that's what's what's the terrifying part of it. And that's why movies like this continue to like live on today, in that sense of like unsuspicion, because that's something that people continue to see. Well, it doesn't fit into the paradox. It does fit into our conversation about unsuspicion earlier.
Oh, for sure. And then you actually mentioned this like briefly beforehand, but on the topic of unsuspicion, we have the like being tricked into signing an insurance form, which I I don't want to steal your ideas. Wait, do you want to just bring that up as well?
Yeah, the idea of Neff tricking Diedrichson into signing his life away pretty much is interesting, and I think that it really does fit into our paradox of like the insurance company, because he thought that he was signing something for his car insurance, but it turns out that he was signing something for his life insurance that he didn't even know he was taking out to begin with. And that
Hmm.
kind of fits into both the paradox and unsuspicion, because Phyllis and Walter knew exactly what was going on. Dietrichson and Lola were none the wiser to it, which is why Lola was there in the first place, because they needed someone who was unsuspecting of either of them.
The last person you'd expect is the insurance agent coming to sell you something. The last person you expect to sell you something, but like give you a second form, and you're like, oh, this is just the carbon copy, and then it's actually something like you don't expect him to be like a literal con artist. Um,
Yeah,
and
because
then
like
like,
in Dietrichson's life, this is just like a normal thing that happens. You know, people come, they sell you insurance.
mhm.
You have no reason to suspect that they're out there trying to kill you. Also,
And like
you
the
know, there's no
whole
reason
Exactly.
behind that.
idea, yeah, the whole concept of this like buying insurance in order like just before you kill someone, I'd say is like a paradox in itself, because it's um like the point of insurance, and well, the point that the insurance companies tell us of insurance is like protect against the worst, and the worst is probably not going to happen, but if it does, your life is not over, you'll be okay. And like the and like your husband dying is the one of the worst things that can happen, like a partner dying, one of the worst things that could happen, especially if they're the primary bread baker, bread maker, the like
Breadwinner.
breadwinner. There we go.
No, he's the bread baker. That's what he does.
We have to leave part of that in this fucking thing.
No, we're gonna leave that. Yeah, but yeah, the like especially if that happens, that is a really that like it's supposed to be here to help you. And it doesn't matter if like insurance is actually a scam or whatever. That's not the conversation. The conversation is like the idea of it, and to turn it upside down and be like, okay, we're gonna buy insurance and then we're gonna kill the person the insurance is for, is a paradox in itself, because it's going against what it's intended to do. Like it's like the opposite of what you're supposed to do with this, but it's actually turning out better for you. So it's, I don't know. Does that make sense? It makes sense in my head. It's just very hard to put into words.
Yeah,
Paradoxes are
because
so hard to explain.
it's a criminal paradox within a paradox itself. The idea that insurance is, yes, it's a paradox in a paradox. This is a scary idea. That insurance is something that can be falsified and by someone else, and then that same another person who also signed the same insurance or is related to someone who is holding the insurance can also kill that person or burn down their business and then take the money, which is that's the scariest part, and that's something that has and happened in real life. Like, people take
Hmm.
out insurance and burn down their businesses, and then they get away with it. And
Hmm.
that happened in my own family. So
No, and you see, and it's especially prevalent in like mafia, like I'm watching The Sopranos. It happened there. Like it happens in cinema and in like media, I guess. Like, I'd say more frequently than it happens in real life. I mean, but it's well, we don't know. every time it happens in real life. I guess
That's what
a
I'm
good
saying.
point.
That's why it's a paradox. That's why
But, yeah.
that's a paradox within a paradox. Because, like, yes, it's happening in the movie, but that's also something that can be easily translated into real life. Because, yes, Phyllis and Walter didn't necessarily completely get away with insurance fraud, but there's people who've probably gotten away with insurance fraud in other film noir or
Yeah, I mean, like in this film, he could have gotten away with it, but that's sort of moral, justification. He just didn't have that, so kind of robbed it in the end, robbed himself of that in the end. But who says that happens in real life? Most people probably just commit to it,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then noir also is like all about surprises. Like, from what I've gathered, like there's, the whole point of it is to have the murderer be the person that you are aware of the whole time and don't know, the unsuspected person. And like, in a sense, it's like it's like you give the audience all the clues to figure it out for themselves, and you intentionally mislead them with a bunch of like red herrings in the film, and then you're like, boom, actually it was here all along, number one, but also it's like completely different. So like in the case of Double Indemnity, I hate that word so much. It's, Phyllis is the surprise. And yeah, maybe some of us guessed it early on, but like there's a whole bunch of like, I'd say red herrings, of her being like all sweet and loving and like acting in love, or who knows? Maybe she actually was in love. I don't think it was clear, if that was happening, because like she didn't shoot him in the end. But like it's this, and I think that you can draw parallels between paradoxes and noir, making the culprit be the person who is innocent, or the person who is presented as innocent, throughout the whole whoops, but through the duration of the film.
For the tick counter on the bottom to see if anyone almost said throughout the film, because I almost said it, and then you just so,
Throughout the duration, it's different.
Throughout the duration. I think that all in all, everything that we talked about has like heavily related back to the film, and like in real life in general, with our conversations about communism and like the unsuspecting within communism during the 1940s, unsuspecting in the film, and then the paradox of the insurance company, and then the paradox of the insurance within the insurance company. All in all, I think we can all agree that Keyes was kind of like the upstanding moral person of the film, and that Neff was very much the opposite of that.
Yeah, he orphaned a girl. I mean,
he did. Out of the two of them, Keyes was the one that was getting my vote.
Definitely.
Very true. Very true.
But all in all, this has been the Throughout the Film podcast.
Yep. Thank you for giving us your time.
Yeah, we'll see you eventually. We watch another movie.
Oh, Bryan! Yeah, I went to the Asian supermarket. I got a ramen bowl.
That's nice.
I got onion ramen. I got this thing. Josh had this. It was yummy. And then I got another one of that.